All right, let's get into it. We usually think of books as something we read for fun or for school, but for a very small group of people, they're actually multi-million-dollar assets. Today, we're going to explore this incredible world of rare books where history, art, and some serious money all collide.
It's a pretty wild thought, right? That some forgotten book tucked away in the attic could turn out to be a hidden treasure. Now, look, it's probably a long shot, but after you see the prices we're about to talk about, you might just look at your own bookshelf a little differently.
Just take a second and look at that number. $38,100,000. That's not for a whole library, not for a publishing company. Nope. That's the price somebody paid for one single book. And you know what's really fascinating? It's who is paying these kinds of prices. The old image of a collector is, some dusty professor in a tweed jacket. But that's changing. The new buyers are tech billionaires and venture capitalists, people who literally made their fortunes in the digital world and are now spending it on these very real, very tangible pieces of the past. So how does a simple stack of paper and ink become something worth a fortune? What's the secret sauce that turns an old book into an object worth millions? Well, it's a question that takes us right into the heart of high-stakes collecting. Because here's the thing, it's not just about being old. There are plenty of old books that aren't worth much at all. To really get it, you have to decode a book's value, and it turns out to be this amazing mix of a few key things.
Okay, so these are the big 5 ingredients. First, availability, or really scarcity. How many are even left in the world? Then there's condition, which is just everything. A tiny tear can knock thousands off the price. Special features are a huge plus, like an author's signature. Then you have the book's own history, its provenance. And finally, desirability. Is this a book our culture still cares about? And that brings us to maybe the coolest concept in collecting, provenance. The easiest way to think about it is like a book's resume. Who owned it before? Can you prove it was on the shelf of a president or a famous scientist? If you can, its value can just explode. It's the story behind the story.
All right, now let's see how all those factors come together. We're going to look at some of the most legendary and expensive books ever sold. These really are the titans of the bookshelf. First up, we have an absolutely monumental piece of religious history. This is the Codex Sassoon. It's one of the most complete Hebrew Bibles on the entire planet, a handcrafted masterpiece from all the way back in the late 9th century. I mean, just look at these stats. It has all 24 books of the Hebrew Bible written on 792 pages of parchment. And for a book that's over 1,000 years old, it's in shockingly good shape. Only about 8 pages are missing. And it just sold in May of 2023. And that sale, well, that's where we got that jaw-dropping number from the beginning of our explainer. $38.1 million. That sale made it one of the most valuable manuscripts ever sold at auction. Just incredible. Next up, a book that gives us a direct peek into one of the greatest minds in all of human history. This is Leonardo da Vinci's personal science journal, the Codex Leicester. Now, this isn't a printed book. This is a one-of-a-kind manuscript written by Da Vinci himself. It's just filled with his ideas and theories on everything from fossils to how water moves. And hey, look at the buyer. Bill Gates. This is the perfect example of a tech titan investing in a priceless piece of scientific history. So back in 1994, Gates paid over $30 million for it. But what he did next is so interesting. He had the whole thing digitally scanned, and then he shared it with the world. It's this amazing blend of preserving a priceless physical object while using modern tech to give everyone access. Okay, now for something totally different. This isn't an ancient text or a scientist's journal. This is a landmark work of natural history and art, John James Audubon's The Birds of America. This book is just famous for its enormous size and its breathtaking beauty. Every single one of the 400-plus illustrations was hand-drawn by Audubon and printed on these massive pages. And with only about 119 complete first editions known to still exist, its rarity is a massive part of its value. Back in 2010, a complete copy sold for an incredible $11.5 million. It's a great reminder that a book's artistic genius can make it every bit as valuable as its historical or religious importance. And of course, you can't have a list like this without what might be the single most important book in all of English literature. Shakespeare's first folio. It is impossible to overstate how important this book is. It was published 7 years after Shakespeare died by his friends. Without this book, plays like Macbeth and The Tempest would have been lost forever. They only printed about 750 copies, and only about a third of those are still around today. Each one is a cultural treasure. And in October of 2020, one of those copies sold for almost $10 million. It's the perfect example of that cultural desirability we were talking about. People will always care about Shakespeare, and the price of this book proves it. Okay, so the multi-million-dollar world is fascinating to look at. But what about for the rest of us? Let's bring this down to earth a bit with some real-world advice for anyone who's ever thought about starting their own collection. Here is a perfect, and I mean perfect, example of why condition is everything. A first edition of the classic detective novel The Maltese Falcon might sell for about $1,500. Not bad. But a copy that still has its original super fragile dust jacket, that price jumps to $75,000. That one little piece of paper makes all the difference. So if you're thinking about starting, the key is to focus. Don't just buy a bunch of random old books. Pick a theme you love, maybe a single author or a genre like sci-fi. Do your homework too. Sometimes a later edition with new artwork is actually worth more than the first. And always, always buy the best condition you can find and then make sure you protect it. And all of this brings us right back to where we started. Whether a book is worth $10 or $10 million, its real value is so much more than just the price tag. It's a snapshot of history, it's a piece of art, and it's a story waiting to be discovered. So the next time you pick up an old book, maybe from a thrift store or even from your own shelf, take a closer look. Think about the journey it's been on. Who owned it? Where has it been? What's its provenance? Because every single book has a story, and sometimes that story is the most valuable part of all.